Okay, so hello everybody, and firstly thank you for taking the time to come and visit me for this morning's PowerShape session. So this PowerShape session is number 4 in the series, and this one's all about constrained geometry. So what is that? Well, quickly whiz through the agenda, what we're going to be talking about for constrained geometry. First of all, using it, and what the relationships are that we can use with constrained geometry, how we can go on to add dimensions to control that geometry further, and then of course use that geometry in some sort of meaningful sense in, for example, a solid. And once we've done that, how do we go about editing that geometry to make a change to the solid, for example? We're going to go a step beyond that though and start to introduce the concept of parameters and what they can bring to us in terms of functionality. And then a final conclusion to all of that is how to go about creating a symbol from the component that you've created that uses this constrained geometry. So there's quite a bit to cover there. I'm going to try and keep it short and sweet. So let's make a start. So constraints. This is the page park that you will see. This is, you can see the toolbar in the top right hand corner here. And the key to all of this is we hit the create button before we start any sketching. Once we've done that and we start to sketch, constraints are automatically added of a variety of different types. But we can then remove or control those according to our needs. So the types of constraints that are available are concentric. So sure enough, that's where effectively circles are fastened to the same center. So as one circle moves, so the others will move with it, keeping the circles concentric to each other. We have equal amounts. So here we've got a situation where maybe this line here is equal in length to this line here, and that will always be so. So if I were to change something that changed one of the lines, so the other would change to match the same length. We've got perpendicular, so in this case here we've got effectively a 90-degree corner here that we can control and keep, so that regardless of what geometry changes, this is fastened to a 90-degree corner. Collinear. In this situation we have lines that are in alignment with each other, so effectively they are in the same vertices direction. Parallel, pretty straightforward that one. So we've got two lines that are parallel to each other running in the same direction. Coincident is where two lines share the same node point. So that node, if we move the end of one of the lines, so the other line endpoint will move with it. Horizontal, it pretty much speaks for itself. It's fastened to the horizontal. It cannot be away from that. And of course, vertical. And the only other one that I'll mention that I don't have a graphic on here for is tangential. So for tangential, we would have a situation where maybe we have a line off one of these circles like so, and this line would be fastened as tangential. So no matter what happened to the circle or to the line, it would remain tangential to this circle. Okay, so let's go and have a look at how we use all of these. And to do that, I'll flip over to PowerShape, and I've got a blank model open, so this is a new empty model that we're looking at here. What I'm simply going to do is go to the Wireframe toolbar, and if I were to draw in Wireframe as normal, what you would see is that sure enough I've got some Wireframe on the screen here, and if I finish that operation, you can see that I've got the Wireframe, but if I start to drag things around and make changes, there's no relationship at all here between the entities. They're all individual entities that go up to make a shape, but beyond that, there's no more sort of linking of them. However, if I were to do that by first clicking the Create button here, now what we see is first of all a little sort of dotted work plane appear on the screen, and I'm able to then start to draw something, either using that as a start point or anywhere on the screen, and then go about drawing some sort of shape. And I'm going to just quickly draw in some sort of shape here. Let's move that over a bit, down a bit, and let's draw in some sort of shape. Can you see that as I start to draw this, what's happening is PowerShape is adding in constraints that it can see that are obvious that I might need. So as I come on down here, no prizes for this one. It's effectively a V block that I'm drawing here. And when I finish that, we now have a sketch that has various constraints on it already. So we've got a constraint here and here and here. So these are vertical and horizontal constraints that we see. If I didn't want one of these, I can simply select it or select more than one using the Shift or the Control key. So I'm going to select all of these for now, like so. And then I'm just going to hit the Delete key. Those have now gone. But what we still have are constraints where the ends are linked together. So if I start to drag things around, you can see that the points follow us around the screen here. So that's good. So while we're in this mode, and you can see we're in that mode because we have a ticker across here. So we're in the kind of constraint construction mode here. To keep what I've done, I hit OK. To cancel everything I've just done, I would hit cancel. So I would like to start to think about maybe looking at this toolkit here. So the first one I'll mention is the ability to modify an origin. And we can simply click a position and it will change where the origin of the construction geometry is from one position to another, like so. If I want to start to add my own constraints, then the process is as follows. We can first of all specify what the constraint is. So let's say we want a horizontal line. For that, what I simply do is click the line, and we can see that it's immediately constrained to horizontal. Likewise, I could do the same somewhere else, or I could go and change now to vertical and fasten that line to vertical. Do you notice that as I do that, entities that are fully constrained start to turn green? So as I do more and more constraining on this geometry, we'll see more and more green entities appear on the screen here. So let's have a look at some more. So that was horizontal and vertical. Maybe what I'd like is a perpendicular option. And for that, I'll go to maybe this corner and this corner and suggest that that has to be perpendicular, and here also needs to be perpendicular. So that's effectively a 90-degree corner. So let's go on to do some more. I'd like two lines, which would be this one and this one, to be collinear. So effectively, this is the master, this is the slave. These two are now collinear. Likewise, I could say the same here and here. So now they are collinear. In the case of these top lines here, I would like those to be parallel. So I'm going to suggest this line here is parallel to this line here, and likewise, this line here is parallel to this line here. I'd like to make certain lines equal, so I can go to the equal button and suggest that this line is equal to this line, and that this line is equal to this line, and of course this line is equal to this line. Another collinear option, here to here, and also now I'd like to make an equal between, for example, this line and maybe this line. Likewise here and here. So another little tip for you as you go around here, to switch off the constraint mode, by the way, just switch it off from the one that you're using. But then you can start to drag things around and start to see what changes and what moves as you do that. And that gives you some clues to where constraints can or still need to be added. So again, I'm going to ask for a vertical line in this position here, and I'm going to ask for collinear between this item and this item. Likewise, I'm going to ask for parallel between, let's say, this item and here, and here, and here, here, and here, this one, and then this one, and this one. So you can see more and more constraints being added that help to control our geometry. I'll just make that one vertical. Okay, so we're pretty much getting along the way there with the constraints that we want to add. Okay, so the next thing that I'd like to talk about is maybe adding on dimensions to this shape. Oh, incidentally, let's hit OK first, so we've got that curve created. So can you see there now we have that as a cross section that we could happily use for whatever we want to do. If I want to edit it, I simply go to it and double click it, and now I'm into constraint mode again, and I can start to add, remove, change constraints as I desire. But what I'm interested in doing right now is adding a dimension. So if I go while in the constraint mode to the dimension button here, I can now add in a dimension. Let me just move that out of the way a little bit, and let's add a dimension from here to here, and let's pop that in just up there somewhere. Likewise, from here to here, And let's pop that in over here somewhere. Excellent. Now, having done that, if I go to the dimension itself and click twice, I'm able now to round that to whatever value I'd like it to be. So you can see that everything's changing according to the constraints I put on there to ensure that we get the dimensions that we want. So let's say that's 80 as well, maybe. Perfect. Good. While I'm here, I just noticed I'd like to put on maybe an equal option between this item and this item and this item and this item. If you over constrain something, you'll just get a little warning to say, look, there's no more constraints can go on here. There are enough to fully constrain the item. Good, so we have those two dimensions on. And of course now, if I want to go and change one of those dimensions, as I said, let's make this one here slightly wider. Let's make that 100. We can see that the update has taken effect. So what else can we do? Well, if I were to undo that change, maybe that make that down to 80. What else can we do? Well, I could start to add on other dimensions. Let's add a dimension on, and let's make the dimension that I'm interested in here the distance between here and here, and put that there. While I'm here, let's make an equal between this item and this item, just to make sure that that stays central. And also, I'll put a dimension on between, let's say, here and here. Good, so I can individually control those, of course. I can simply go in and change that to be a value. So if I wanted to, I could say, okay, this value here is no longer 14.92, it's now 15, for example, and that will update and change accordingly. I'll just add one more constraint on to make this item equal to this item. There we go. And so happily I can go around and change these values. Good. But let's add a little bit more intelligence to this sketch. And what I can do is, I'll do that now actually, yeah. So let's say that 80, I'd like to use a parameter for that. So what I can do is go to, this is kind of a shortcut to doing this, go to the value that changes the actual, the text box that changes the value. And in here, I could declare a variable or a parameter at the same time as using it. So I'm going to declare one called W, which equals 80. So width equals 80. Now I get a little bit of text to say W 80. And here, I'll change this one to say H equals 80 as well for now. Excellent. This value here, I'm going to say this value equals W times, let's say, 0.8 times 0.8. So this time I didn't say W equals, what I said was W times 0.8. And on this one here, I'm going to change this to be maybe, let's have a look, height, about a fifth of the height, shall we say. H over 5. Excellent. So we started to add some more intelligent values to this sketch. So let's click OK to that for a moment. Everything disappears. All is good. If I now want to change the parameter, all I simply do is go to the home page, and there's a parameters button here, and I can go to this parameters button. And if I go to the parameters tab, what I'm able to do is choose one of these values and change its value from 80 to, let's say, 100. And we can see the sketch updates. Okay, according to whatever values I've used. So with that in mind, I could go on a little bit further. In fact, what I might just do here is if I just double click this, I might add in one more dimension. So go to wireframes here, add a dimension in that is between here and here, and let's make that value something like height. Should we say about 0.75 of the height, something like that? So h times 0.75. Undo that one. I can add more constraints in to keep what I want and so on. So maybe I'll just add in one more constraint here. Something like that. There we go. And then control the values accordingly there. Okay, so once I've done that and added those in, what I'm now able to do is to take this curve or this cross section and create an extrusion out of it. So let's go to the solid page and go for a solid extrusion. But I'm going to double click this extrusion and declare another one, which is the length. And I'm going to say that is D equals, let's say D equals 100. So now I've got all of these parameters that I can change and work with in my my design, my solid, if you like. If I decide that I need to change the depth, I can either do it by double clicking it, or I can do it more intelligently via the home page and the parameters. And in here, I can say that the depth is no longer 100, the depth is now 50. And that's changed. Likewise for any of those values. Good. If I need to change something else about the sketch, then all I need to do on the solid is double click the solid, go to the sketch button and then edit sketch, and immediately you can see that we're in the constraint mode, and I can change any of these constraints using the values directly here, or by changing the constraints that I desire and so on. Good, but there's one more thing that I'd like to talk about, and that is what happens if we've got multiples of this item. Well, if I take this item and with a control key, I'm going to drag and drop it, so now I have a copy of this item. So I have two. What just happened to the parameters? Well, here, let's have a look. If we go to the home page and take a look at the parameters page and look at the pull down, can you see what's happened there? We have D and then D underscore 1, H and H underscore 1. So it's effectively copied the parameters. So I can make changes individually to each of these items. Now that may be what you want, or it may not be what you want. If it isn't what you want, let's undo that to get rid of that item. Let's go to the File Options page and look at the application options. And under General Edits, there's an option here, Create Copies of Parameters. If we switch that off and click OK, now look what happens. When I drag and drop to make a copy and look at the parameters, what we see is that there's only one set of parameters. So if I change, for example, the height from 100, sorry, the depth from 50 to 120 maybe, both items update as opposed to individually, which is what would have happened previously. So that's all good. We've got our parameterized V block that we might want to use in all sorts of applications. Maybe it's some clamping or something that you use a lot. Whatever it is, it's entirely up to you. How do we go about making that something more useful that we can use as part of a library? Well, let me show you. So let's delete this item. And let's think about turning this into a symbol. So what I can do is go to the annotation page. And can you see here, there's a symbol page, create a symbol or define a symbol. What I'd like to do is define a symbol. So I'm going to select it and ask to create a new symbol. Now, it's asking me, do you want to create this? First of all, what's the name? I'm going to call it demo. Give it a description if you want. But then it's asking me, where do you want to store this, symbol? Do you want to store it in the current model? Or would you like to be a little bit more intelligent about this and store it in a library? So what I did previously is I basically saved a blank model into my database called symbol underscore library. And here's the clever thing, is if you create any name but put at the end of it underscore library, PowerShape knows to offer you this as a possible library for symbols that you're going to create. So in the future, no matter which PowerShape model you're working in, it's possible to easily select a symbol from a library, a repository that you can use in your model. So if I go to my symbol library, let's just do it in the current model for now. I can select one or more hotspots. These are the points that I can actually use to click it into position. So I've just come from bottom center here. When I hit apply now, what we will see is that in my current model, incidentally, it disappears. Yeah, but in my current model now, if I need to create my shape, I can go to demo and simply pop that into position, like so. Alternatively, if I delete all of those, I could go to my create button and I could go to my symbol library, and in there is a V block that I could just drop into position, like so. Now, when I click OK to that, let's go and have a look at the parameters. So in the parameters page, what have we got? We've got the various depth, widths, and height. So we've got D1, H1, and so on. So these are the ones that I defined with this particular shape. So if I look at D1, can you see that D1 I declared as the width over 2, so half of the width, and H1 was 160 mil, and W1 was 140 mil. So let's say I want to change that 140 mil. I can simply change that here to 180 mil. So when I hit apply, nothing happens there. Let me just get H. There we go. Nothing will happen to the model until you, because these are symbols, although the parameter has been updated, it's maintaining the shape of the part until such time that you select them, right-hand mouse key, and then convert these back into a solid. I don't know if you just saw there, but they just changed in length slightly. So to get the update to happen in this model, once you've added them in as a symbol, simply select, if you desire, select and convert them back into normal solids, and then any updates you make to the parameters will change the shape of the component. All right, so hopefully that's opened up a whole new horizon for you and on creating wireframe that has constraints, and then going on to use that in some sort of meaningful sense and adding value to how you go about your daily business using solids from libraries and so on. Okay, so what we looked at there was how to use all of these particular constraints and then go on to parameterize those and use them as symbols. If you have any questions, type them in. We won't answer them during this session. What we'll do is we'll take it as usual. We'll take a look at those and then formulate answers and email those out to everybody that's on the list. All that remains is to thank you for your time and look forward to seeing you in the next, or speaking to you in the next session. That's it from me.